The truth about farming is that it is seriously undervalued, and underutilized, and remains a missed opportunity for almost all governments. Farms usually trade by growing a volume of crops in the hope of selling it in the future. This is the selling side of the trade. Lots of farmers usually sell at the same time around harvest. Trying to sell a product in plentiful supply will suffer reducing prices. Most farmers are forced to trade with middlemen who ultimately do not treat farms as an essential part of our food, energy and resources supply chain. Farms are actually treated as the buyers of multiple services and products for them to produce crops and resources that essentially underpin the whole of our society. In many cases, farms are literally one harvest away from bankruptcy. The current logic of the farm sector not receiving fair value for the products and services it supplies means that farmers are not reinvesting into their farms to lift standards and maintain commercial viability. This is a loss to farmers and the economy. Currently everyone knows that chemical fertilizers, pesticides and herbicides along with modern single-crop farming is destroying the soils upon which all farms grow their crops. This is the very food and commerce upon which an economy is built. How can this be allowed to happen? Everyone knows that fossil fuels are causing climate change, and yet farm-grown energy crops could literally replace the use of fossil fuels with crop-grown energy that is safer, more profitable, sustainable and without any more carbon emissions. The farm scale is there in almost all countries to literally grow their own energy. Yet none of this happens with deteriorating soils. Fossil fuels and chemicals are the culprit again. They also identify the solution. What should be happening is that farms should build from demand-side trade contracts to ensure that they are properly compensated for their efforts. Let's consider this carefully. Farms are a foundation to any economy. They build food, energy and natural resources like timber, food, pulp or fiber for our consumption. They should be producing all of our energy also. These natural resources are grown and therefore accrue in value through their cultivation. It is common for $1 of farming to become $5 of economic value. It is possible for much more value to be achieved, especially with timber. None of this happens without farming. Is not the growth and value of a tree or a lettuce bringing new value or investment equivalent capital into an economy? Of course it is. Therefore logically, the more produce of high quality and value grown in a farm will generate economic growth equivalent to investment capital, but without losing benefit to the domestic economy or payment to an investment equivalent capital source. Every single value process after the produce leaves the farm grows further value in an economy. Logs to timber, oranges to jam, mangoes to starch. Without farms producing these resources, there is no value accrual across the foundation or vertically within an economy. The alternative to domestic-grown food or resources is that they have to be imported at a cost to the economy. This costs foreign currency reserves. Jobs are lost, value in crops is lost and value in processing is lost. The cost to the economy is over a 200% accounting swing from profit to loss of not growing domestic resources. This is before the velocity of capital and other fiscal considerations. Would not this exact same economic thinking be applied to the production of domestic energy crops? Simply put, every farm builds value. Therefore every farm should be profitable and fully resourced as a foundation to every economy. Every farm operates off of the ground it is based on. This centers around the water and soils the farm has at their disposal. Water and soils are intrinsically symbiotic and linked in how they operate and perform. Without a healthy soil and properly water-resourced farm, how reliable is that food, energy or resource production going to be? How can such an important and fundamental resource channel be ignored by those seeking to build robust economies and reverse climate change? Farms should receive minimally 15% of the total retail value of the products from the crops they grow to support their farms. In many cases they see 3%. Farming should be as organized as the energy sector is. Fossil fuel companies know where their reserves are, how to recover them and how to finance this recovery. They even have risk analysis and accounting assessments of these resources. They spend billions in planning, technology, storage and logistics to get these fossil fuels to the pumps or power stations. Any farm could grow energy crops to replace fossil fuels. Many farms could grow enough crops to replace all fossil fuels, especially if they were managed like the energy industry. How much value, expertise and investment would this bring into agriculture? How much less cost, reduced risk and future profit would this bring to an energy company? Anyone with a molecule of expertise in either sector would know this would be a successful coming together of two huge industries to deliver sustainable energy and produce to market, significant profit to shareholders and of course reverse the escalating risk from the environmental costs from the continued use of fossil fuels. The same applies to bioplastics, which should be being produced but which actually suffer from a lack of biomass raw materials to make the bioplastic polymers. The same applies to pulp for the paper industry. Again, we see the same shortages in the fiber industry. In fact, in every sector where fossil fuels or chemicals have a large market presence, then there seems to be a consistent failure of connection to agriculture to grow the sustainable alternatives. The Farm Smarter model is to plan farming from the demand side to these huge global trade sectors beyond food into bioplastics, fibers, pulp for paper and of course energy. This enables the full resourcing of farming from the soils to the technology, including capital, technology and management. This builds sustainable production capacities for domestic and international markets and trade. The scale and capabilities are all available today. A critical cornerstone of this sustainable agro-energy and food plan is to put in place a plan to produce the biological soils. The technology exists where before there was a gap. www.infinitybiologicalsoils.com. From these soils, all farms can transition to commercial non-chemical farming and decouple from the global fertilizer markets. The local soils production controls costs and supply while reducing the input costs to farmers beyond 90%. This reduces the cost of living and energy supply problems all economies are facing today. Of course, agro-energy is part of the solution, with solar, wind, wave, hydrogen and others all having their place. Where agro-energy comes into its own is the immediate scale of the solution, the domestic benefit retention and the security of the energy supplies. Bringing energy wealth into agriculture would make the combined sectors enormously productive and valuable. The same can be said of timber, pulp, fiber, sugars, foods and much more. There is no need for fossil fuels and their emissions and the gargantuan costs to remedy the global warming consequences of climate change. This is the plan for the future of farming and the energy sectors. More details will be provided to support their implementation. See other media in the series to better understand the soils and technology and agro-energy. Another Efficiency Professor Media Presentation. Another Efficiency Professor